Alternet put a great list together from various different sources about the ways that America leads the world. We are absolutely number one, right? You've heard that before. America, number one. America, right? All right, so before I get into the list, first I want to address the kind of jingoistic attitude of the Republican Party, the modern-day Republican Party. That's all you hear from conservatives these days is, oh, America's number one, we're the best, right? Well, a good example of this is actually when John Boehner calls our healthcare system the best healthcare system in the world. Maybe your healthcare is the best in the world, John, but not America's. And here's some interesting facts before we get into that list. We spend more than 12 other we spend more money on healthcare than 12 other industrial nations. We paid about $8,000 more per person in healthcare, but according to research, we found that higher spending did not correspond to a higher quality of care. So we spend more, get less. That's pretty well, that's pretty sketchy there. How come it seems like we're getting shafted, aren't we? I wonder who's profiting from that. Could it be the insurance companies? Could it be the healthcare companies? I don't know. So that leads us actually into our first stat, how America is the most expensive place to have a baby. Yes, America, most expensive place to have a baby. Now, the New York Times reports that on average, hospital delivery costs nearly $10,000, $15,000 if you need a C-section. That is pretty expensive. Now, you're probably thinking, well, what if you have insurance, right? I mean, you have to have insurance. Well, over half of insurance plans don't provide maternity coverage. The ones that do still have an out-of-pocket cost of average of $3,400.
That's outrageous.
That's absolutely outrageous. Now, to kind of tie this into some of the hypocrisy of the Republican Party, of how they're, basically forcing, or they want to force every pregnant woman to have a child. Well, who's paying for that? Because if the person cannot pay for that, the taxpayers do, and that is a hefty bill.
And you notice the kinds of things that insurance companies don't want to pay for: childbirth, contraception, abortion. Gee, what do all those three things have in common? They're women's medical issues.
Good point. So, getting into the next step of how we lead the world, it is also health related. Now, America has been ranked, and you'd be surprised. Actually, you wouldn't be surprised if you've ever been to a Walmart. We are the most obese country in the world, or at least for a while we were. Now, Mexico is actually either catching up to us, or has or will overtake us fairly soon. So that's pretty disastrous. Now, going to what the most obese state is, you'll love this. The most obese state in America is Kentucky.
Oh, I would have guessed Texas.
No. Well, they do make them bigger in Texas, but not quite as big as in Kentucky. That is Rand Paul's state, by the way.
I think the Mexican thing also is attributed partly, at least significantly, to the fact that the westernized diet is moving down to Mexico, so they're getting more fast food and stuff.
We export a lot of our stuff, a lot of our culture around the world, and it has good things, it has bad things. You have too much of a good thing, turns into a bad thing. But that's just my opinion on that. Now, researchers predict that the cost of obesity in the U.S. is likely to reach $344 billion by 2018. So that's going back to
the healthcare.
That's going back to the healthcare part. Now, the next stat is fascinating. The U.S. also leads the world in anxiety disorders. So according to the 2009 results of the World Health Organization's World Mental Health Survey, 19% of Americans were found to experience a clinical anxiety disorder over a 12-month period. Americans are anxious. And, you know, I would more attribute that to our way of life, the way that we live. We're always on the go. We're always trying to keep up with the Joneses. You know what I mean? We've got high pressure jobs
I also
and
think
a
it's
lack of jobs around
definitely,
us.
there you go. I also think it's definitely attributable to how many people are living in poverty or right at the edge of poverty, which is really poverty,
Yeah,
and are living paycheck
income
to paycheck.
inequality. That's, you
They're,
know, that's income inequality creates, you know, a lot of anxiety. When you're poor, it's tough. You know, it's really difficult not to be anxious about your situation.
yeah, especially when you're so poor that you're like, God, am I going to be able to afford food next week, or do I have to forego paying my electric bill so that I can buy food?
Or can I afford rent or lose my house and then get arrested because I slept on a bench?
Right.
If you're in Florida. So anxiety, yeah, we are 19% of Americans were found to experience an anxiety disorder. That's an amazing stat. It's very disastrous. And not only that, but the National Institutes of Health uh, puts the number at 18% of adults, which means that at least 40 million Americans are suffering with some sort of anxiety disorder. That's a disaster. Now, our next stat actually leads us to another part of why I think people are so anxious. Uh, Everybody is pretty much armed. In fact, the Graduate Institute of International Studies in Geneva ranks the United States as number one in both the total number of civilian firearms and in per capita ownership of small firearms. Now that beats out recent war zones like Yemen, Serbia, and Iraq.
Wow.
You wonder why people are anxious.
Right.
There you
Yeah,
go.
actually, I'm pretty anxious about going outside my door, living in a state like Ohio with all of this gun madness going around right
Or,
now.
or to be fair, you know, maybe it's the anxiety first and then they go out and get a gun because they're anxious. I don't know. It could go either way.
It's a
But
massive cycle.
yeah, so the rate of private gun ownership in the U.S. was tabulated at 101.5 firearms per 100 individuals, and this is in one study. We're number one. We're
But
number
wasn't
one.
wasn't there another statistic that said that the number of
We
gun
have over
owners was
300
going
million
down?
guns here in America. Yes.
You don't need more than three.
Well,
Yeah, but I was saying that there was a statistic out not long ago that said the number of gun owners is actually going down, which means that your numbers are correct, but it also means that
I was going to get to that.
fewer people own more guns.
According to a recent report on CNN, Americans own as many as one-third of the guns in the entire world. Research also shows that while the number of households with guns has declined, current
Right.
gun owners are stockpiling more guns.
There's a lot of paranoid Alex Jones, Glenn Beck type people out there hoarding their guns because they're afraid that the government's going to come and try to take them
Take them.
to cut.
Like
Yeah,
Mr. Mark Kessler. Come and take it. Come and take it. Dude, I don't want to take it.
they're coming. They're coming to your house and they're going to put you in hobbit homes and take
Oh,
away your
jeez.
guns, force you to listen to Jon Stewart and The Daily Show.
Oh, Jesus. So here's another related statistic. In the United States, gun-related murder rate is the second highest in the developed world. Okay, so we're only number 2 on this one. We're second highest only in the second highest in the developed world. Only Mexico beats us out as number 1, and of course that's kind of because it's our fault because of the whole drug war.
Right.
And there's so many killings on the border between us and Mexico, and in Mexico because of the drug war. So I guess that's I would attribute that to our doing in that way. Another depressing stat is that we are number 1 in incarceration. In fact, we incarcerate more people than Russia, Cuba, Iran, or China. And according to the International Center for Prison Studies, we lock up 716 out of every 100,000 people. So, I mean, We hit on that topic earlier, the fact that, you know, locking people up gets the prison corporations money, so there's a financial incentive in sending people to prison. So that's why, and of course, a majority of the people that are in prison are African American.
Of course.
So another depressing stat is that energy use. We use more energy as a country than any other country in the world. We're number
Including
one.
China.
Even China. We consume the most oil and the second most amount of coal, which that of course goes to China. And then the last depressing stat is that, surprise, surprise, we are number one in cocaine use. Cocaine use. I didn't actually see that coming. Actually. That was a surprise stat for me. I didn't know that we are number one, or at least we're leading the world in cocaine use. Although I suppose I can understand with, once again, income inequality, all the anxiety. A lot of people are probably out there self-medicating, and just it's a disaster.
You know, I don't see a lot of cocaine around here, but I do see a lot of poor people who, if they can get their hands on some sort of adrenaline pumping upper like that they will crush up pills or whatever and snort it. And they do this. You might judge them for, other people might judge them for doing it, but what they're actually doing it for is so that they can stay awake, so that they can also work for up to 24 hours straight at 2 or 3 separate jobs.
I wouldn't be surprised. Wouldn't be surprising to me whatsoever. But according to the Office of National Drug Control Policy, like I said, cocaine is the second most popular drug behind pot. But unlike marijuana, of course, cocaine is associated with higher rates of death, because who has ever, can you think of any case of where somebody had died after smoking pot?
No.
I can't.
I mean, if they did, then they were taking something else, like they were drinking.
That it was probably laced with something, and that does happen. And it wouldn't happen if the federal government were to legalize it, regulate it, and tax it.
Right.
A little bit of food for thought. So, but what I want to finish out with is that the point of this topic and why I chose to do it is not to bash the United States. I love America. Okay, I do. But what I want to do is point out the problems. I'm not going to be like some jingoistic Republican saying, oh, are you kidding me? America's the best. We're the shining city on the hill. We're the best out of everybody, and everybody else sucks. Go America. Right? I'm not going to do that. What I want to do is point out our legitimate problems, the things that I think that we're doing wrong and that we could do better at. We could do a lot better in solving income inequality. We could do a lot better in reforming drug policy and reforming our prison system. We could do a lot better than what we're doing right now if we were to actually do it.
Right. We need to dispel the illusions that we're the best of everything in the whole world and that we have no flaws and that we can't get any better.
Once we dispel those illusions and get people to see the truth and actually get people to actually work on these things and solve these things, we can be number one again.